I would like to call the October meeting of the Residents' Council to order, and Ramsey Geyer is leading us in our invocation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let us pray. Eternal and gracious Father, we're thankful for all the blessings that you bestow upon us. We would ask that you would watch over this council as it deliberates the issues of our community, give them wisdom, give them patience. We ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. And our secretary's report with Gretchen Harris.
Good morning. The September video recorded meeting minutes were distributed, published on MyWLife, and posted on all the community bulletin boards. No corrections were received, so those minutes will stand as published. The Finance Committee report was also published on MyWLife, along with the minutes and August Treasurer's report.
Thank you. And our treasurer's report from Elizabeth Ray.
Good morning. Things are still pretty slow from the treasurer's side. We did get that $15,000 scholarship advance from the fund that's maintained down by corporate from all of the donations you have given for the employee scholarships. They have already distributed all but about 5,500 of it. So they've made good use of that, so we're happy for that. Small amount of bingo receipts. The museum got their final consignment check, all of $18.50, so their whole balance at this point for the museum is only $307. I don't think that's going to cover the appraisals and stuff that they need, so we're not sure where we're going from there. There's nothing yet for the boutique on last month's report. We did deposit almost $500 from the sale they had here, I think it was a week ago Friday. It was this month. And they're open again, and I encourage you to go shop, go visit. Your donations that you leave there as you get new treasures is what supports our ability as a council to give away quarterly awards to our employees, and it's also where we get any funds available to donate to the Benevolent Assistance Fund. So Christmas Fund also is going well. I do thank those of you who have already made donations. I'm sure the Christmas committee is very pleased, and I promise you they're going to keep asking for more until next month we get the last request for donations, just in case. It's a reminder in case you haven't given any yet and want to, or if you would like to increase your donation. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And a couple of reports from committees. Wayne Sims and the Dining Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, Kathy, and everyone else. Those of us who've been there, and most of you have heard also in addition to that, the old saying that an army travels through its stomach. And I don't think it's any different for us that we travel through our stomachs. And I say that because this week is being celebrated as Healthcare and Dining Services Workers Week, as we salute them. And those of you who attend the dining room have seen a big board saluting the workers in dining services, and we salute them also. That obviously, we also hear a lot of criticism at times. That's natural, and we know it happens. But think of it sort of like the Army. We're not the Army Chief of Staff. There's a pecking order down through and including our executive director until it gets to Director David of Dining Services. And believe me, they're going all out to do everything they can to make dining as pleasant as possible, upgrading as often as we can to do things. Also, would remind you that we're having to do extra things. We have assistant directors, we have directors, we have techs, we have cooks who are out delivering meals to these various locations around the campus. So it cuts the routine down significantly within the dining facilities. I just wanted to take a moment to tell them, on behalf of the residents, how much we appreciate their efforts. Even though there are some snags here and there, they're doing a magnificent job, and we just applaud them for that. A reminder that tomorrow, if you haven't made a reservation, and I'm not sure if there's any even left, it's the monthly dining with the chef, and assistant chef, sous chef Bill Mink is going to be in charge tomorrow. You'll be in for a pleasure if you haven't done it. Check and see if you still get in. 12:30 in the gathering place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Pam Thomas, who's just recently taken over the boutique, has some information for us.
Thank you. Well, we are very excited to have the boutique open. It had been requested so many times throughout the closed times, and I was one of them because I had shopped there for 8 years prior to moving when I was on campus with my mother-in-law. So I'm very excited to be engaged in it as well. I'd like to start off with thanking Brian, who supported our getting it cleaned thoroughly and painted. It looks so much better. Thank you for that. Everybody comments when they come in. They do. Well, as you heard, we did have the spring and summer sale. That went well. We had had so many clothes that had been stockpiled that a lot of them ended up going to donations. So we were able to pass on the benefit of the clothes to other organizations that were direly in need of clothes, especially during the pandemic. So we feel really good about that. We're open from 10 to 4. We're playing around with our hours because when we were open originally, it wasn't meeting a lot of people's needs and so forth and so on. So we're playing around, but we're open 10 to 4, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we are accepting donations while we're there and the shop is open. Any questions? Oh, thank you. The new name is Full Circle Boutique. We had so many creative names. I mean, everybody I think on campus was calling me with names, and I was so impressed with them. In the end, they had to be narrowed down. I had different people look at them and make a list. And then we made a list of the top 5 choices, and those were included at the spring and summer sales, so we had a drawing, and Full Circle came up. So I would love to be able to tell you who submitted that name. However, I started getting so many names that I stopped writing down people's names, because I would get calls when I was out on campus or out and about running errands, and I didn't always have paper to write things on. So anyway, thank you for all who engaged in that.
Thank you, Pam. Are there other committee chairs who would like to report? Wayne?
Green light. Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise before you today wearing 2 hats, actually. I'm Wayne Letizia. I am the chair of the Health Services Committee, and I would like to remind everyone that next Wednesday we are having the Operation Medicine Cabinet. So if you have any medications that you are no longer using, please consolidate them into as few bottles as possible and bring them to River Lounge. River Lounge is here, not the Resident Lifestyle Building, between 11:30 and 1 next Wednesday, and we will have them safely disposed of by the Sheriff's Department. This is a good way to get rid of all your medications. We cannot take creams, we cannot take liquids, but any pills and tablets we can take for the Operation Medicine Cabinet, so please don't forget that. And Madam Chair, I also rise before you as a member of the Employees Christmas Fund. On Saturday, at the SYNC meeting, the chair of the committee, Bill Talley, mentioned that we had given out $106,000 last year as Christmas gifts to the staff. Of this, $10,000 had been taken from reserves that we had built up in prior years. These reserves have now been depleted, so we actually only raised $96,000. But Bill Talley has set a goal of $150,000 to be raised this year, so dig deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Any others? Susan?
Good morning. I'm Susan Letizia, and I'm otherwise known as Miss Know-It-All. If you didn't see the SYNC program that was on Saturday, we did a skit, and it's on virtual experience on MyW Life. So I just thought that might be fun. And we will be having the hazardous waste program in November. So watch the chimes for the date in November. And you can bring your creams and other things that you don't want to put in, that don't go in the medicine cabinet one. You can bring those. Any liquid should be dumped out, and the bottles, if they're 1 to 3, can go in recycle. But anything else that, like a lot of cosmetic type stuff can actually go, and it will not leak out then into the groundwater. Thank you.
Okay, on to business items. At the Planning Committee meeting last week, we talked extensively about a request from the Health Services Committee relative to emergency medical assistance, and I'm going to turn it over to Joan to give us the background and then some resolutions.
Okay, we're on. The Council thanks the Health Services Committee for the time and the research that they put into this issue, and they've been working on this for several months, and they've really done an excellent job with their research. They brought this issue to the Residents' Council planning meeting October the 7th and asked for input from the Residents' Council. It was noted that the issues involved were far more comprehensive than simply looking at nursing assistance during the overnight hours and on weekends. To give you a little bit of history, residents were not informed of the discontinuing of this service, but found out only when trying to use the service the past several months. Second, emergency assistance for independent living residents is needed 24 hours, 7 days per week, and has been provided for many years prior to mid-March of 2020. At the present time, residents are advised to call 911 for assistance or to activate the SARA system in their home or their pendant, and a security person from WWJC would arrive who would not be able to render any type of assistance other than to be sure that 911 had been called. What is the rationale for discontinuing this type of assistance to independent living residents? The COVID-19 pandemic prompted discontinuing this service when the Agency for Healthcare Administration Emergency Order 20-006 was issued March 15, 2020. This order shut down all communal activities in continuing care retirement communities and further restricted staff to their respective skilled areas. Thus, the residential assisted living nurse was no longer available to leave assisted living for emergency assistance, as had occurred in the past. This, in essence, left the independent living residents with only 911 to call and a security person who arrived who really had no medical or first aid training. Given the current situation with the pandemic, it is anticipated that this situation will not change in the future. This now leaves close to 400 residents with no emergency services other than calling 911. There are other complicating issues in reviewing this. Number one, more independent living residents are aging in place and need some type of emergency system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This type of service was marketed to the residents, and one of the primary reasons many of our residents moved to WWJC. Number three, many residents are caregivers for an ill partner or spouse and one who has significant cognitive decline. In the event the caregiver is incapacitated, administration must be immediately alerted. 4, many residents are single and have no family members nearby that can assist them. Number 5, most residents do not know how to access the healthcare system for extra services, even the things that are available on WWJC. Number 6, resource clinic nurse is not always available Monday through Friday during the day shift. This is when physicians are seeing patients in the clinic, possibly the lab is present, and other medical services are being provided in the clinic. And that leaves her with the responsibility of staying with those service providers. When the council reviewed these details and concerns, it left us with 2 types of services that we should think about and support for independent living residents. Services number 1, this would be the 24/7 personnel to assist independent living residents during an emergency. These individuals must be trained and competent in CPR and basic first aid. These individuals must be knowledgeable relative to the specific needs of the geriatric population they will serve. And these individuals must have all the necessary HR background checks as other staff members. We know that as we continue with the COVID pandemic, that nursing staff cannot leave the assisted living building to provide any type of services. So our services go back to a staff security person who has specialized training. Service number 2, in looking at these issues, pointed out the need for a social worker and/or a case nurse manager. This individual is needed to assist residents to access the healthcare system, both on campus and off campus. Many of our residents do not know the services that we actually do provide here at Westminster. And number 2, be advised of the services available to them, both here and the surrounding community. This service can be provided on a part-time basis if it is easily available to the residents. The third piece that we saw in this puzzle was, what are the residents' responsibilities? For any health system to be effective, residents will need to maintain updated medical records and other medical documents that are essential to their care. These documents must be available in a conspicuous location in the residence so that it can be accessed in the event that 911 is called, or even if a security person / CPR person comes to your house. And this was a position that we thought could be managed by Health Services Committee as an ongoing project. This brings us then to the list of resolutions. For ease of management of the resolutions, Madam Chairman, would it be easier to take them one at a time?
I think so.
If you're ready, we'll move ahead with resolutions. I move the Westminster Community Residents Council requests that WWJC provide emergency medical assistance during all hours, 24/7, for independent living residents. Emergency medical assistance means that a staff responder to an emergency call is either a registered nurse or is a security person certified in CPR and first aid.
Okay, a second for the motion. Is there discussion? Dudley?
Elizabeth, second. We have 2 seconds.
Your question is, do we have a social worker? At this time, no. That's actually the 5th of our resolutions. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor, raise your right hand. I think that's unanimous. Okay. Proceed.
Okay. The second resolution is the Residents' Council requests WWJC administration respond to this particular issue and this resolution within a period of 14 days. The response should include the implementation date.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
The third motion is to the Executive Director to clarify the WWJC position on emergency medical assistance with the Marketing Department.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay. Let's see, all in favor? Say aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And let's see, number 4.
The Westminster Woods Julington Creek Leadership Team, including staff, Residents' Council, Health Services Committee, communicates this action to all independent living residents as soon as possible.
Okay, a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And 5th?
I move the Residents' Council request that WWJC management seek to employ, possibly part-time, a social worker and/or nurse case manager to assist independent living residents with their health care needs.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Okay, then we have a couple of amendments to the council handbook.
Yes, we have, well, actually, there's one in this particular area. Just as an introduction and background to it, one of our council members here, Carol Ladner, who sits to my right, has taken on the task of updating and revising the resident council handbook. Appendix 5 has already been completed and approved, and the next area to be revised is Appendix 3, which is basically all the 5 standing committees. This motion deals with only one part of the revision of Appendix 5, the requirement to report minutes and the distribution and disposition of these reports. If approved, this motion will be incorporated in the final revision of Appendix 3. It reads as follows: Be it so moved that standing committees shall report their monthly reports to 1. vice chair committees of the resident council, and 2, resident lifestyle facilitator. The resident lifestyle facilitator will be requested to post said reports on MyWLife, retaining only the most current monthly reports. The vice chair committees shall consolidate all monthly reports. At the end of the fiscal year, this annual compilation of reports will be turned over to the vice chair operations. The vice chair operations shall retain the 2 most recent fiscal reports, after which time the reports shall be archived.
Okay. Detailed motion, which is appropriate for the handbook, dealing with reports from standing committees. It is a motion. So a second? Okay, discussion. Okay, seeing no one who wants to speak, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Another one?
Yes, this is a rather mundane one. The background on this is the Dining Services Committee currently meetings start at 1:30 in the afternoon on the second Thursday of the month. The committee voted and approved a change to start at 1 o'clock to better align with starting times of other activities scheduled that normally start at 1 or 2 o'clock. The chair of the Dining Services Committee has petitioned the resident council to approve this change. As resident council bylaws require approval of the meeting times, the following motion is presented. So move that the Dining Services meeting be approved to start at 1 p.m. on the second Thursday of the month.
A second. Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Is there any other business for the council?
This is more informational than business. For those of you who are in attendance, there are copies of the most recent treasurer's report on that octagonal table in the back, and I think there's probably enough for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then Brian, it's your turn.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you all, and this topic of the emergency call system is an important one. And I welcome the opportunity to partner with the Resident Council and the Health Services Committee in addressing the resolution as it has been outlined today. I see the resolution as involving 3 different components. One is the communication, which, as it was stated earlier, was not communicated at first when the nurse stopped responding. And thank you, Joan, for helping to reiterate the reason why the assisted living nurse is not able to respond at this time. But going forward, it's important that we're maintaining communication about this, and I hope that everybody recognizes the amount of times I've initiated and welcomed the opportunity to talk about this topic is one in which I'm involving everybody in what the outcome and the solution or resolution, may be in the future. So the services and the training is another aspect, and one of the things that we put into place was that we started training the maintenance workers who are serving as security guards in CPR and first aid, and that happened in September. One of the existing maintenance guys is already a CNA and already CPR and first aid certified. But as we move forward to the contracted security services here on our campus, not only is that going to enhance our services, our security services for our campus, it's also going to give us guards that are first aid and CPR certified, and it's also going to relieve the resident lifestyle and maintenance team members who are currently working the screening gate right now. So there's a lot of positive that's coming as part of the plan that we're working on right now. And then the final is the updating of the handbook. And that's something else that we've talked about, that there are some inconsistencies in our practices as they're represented in the handbook. The handbook was updated most recently in 2019. Previous to that was 2017, and previous to that was 2015, which is the oldest one that I've been able to access at this time. So I thank you all, for the opportunity to work with you on this. Our goal is not to take away security services or safety and wellness services. Safety of our residents is of the utmost importance, and all I'm striving to do is to enhance the services that we're already providing. On another note, this month is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Therefore, I wore my pink tie. I also believe that we're all going to be wearing, both residents and staff will be wearing pink on the 16th, which is later this week. And we just want to encourage everybody to take advantage of the opportunities to do their screenings and make sure that they are well, especially during this period of time where we have not been getting out and maybe going to the doctor as frequently as we have in the past. We also want to celebrate all of the survivors. Cancer has been a tremendous diagnosis and has impacted many families and lives of people. And the closer that we get to a cure for cancer, the better we're all going to be. We heard today about the boutique opening up, and we had the sale that took place a couple Fridays ago. And having a boutique open now is something that people have been asking for. And it's exciting that we've been able to continue to resume more and more services on a weekly basis, or almost weekly basis, here on our campus. And we haven't had to discontinue any services that we've resumed. And I think that that's partially attributed to the approach that we're having to making sure that we are doing this in a safe, cautious, and responsible way. The grocery runs is something that I've heard a lot from a lot of garden apartment residents, and I'm very happy that they have the opportunity to go to Publix or Walmart now and get their groceries and not have to depend on family or friends to assist them in doing those errands. So a lot's been going on. As you've seen, we have continued to have a sporadic coronavirus case or exposure on our campus. They've continued to be isolated, and in many cases have not resulted in a transmission to a resident. But as you saw in the most recent publication, we do have a resident that has tested positive, but I also want to reassure you that person is asymptomatic and seems to be doing well. So, Madam Chair?
What is the procedure for visitors on campus? A resident told me that her daughter wanted to come Sunday and was basically told because she didn't make a reservation, she couldn't come.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I thank you for bringing that up, because it's been great to see family members back on campus and to see people reuniting. There are many family members in each level of care that are going through the process of being an essential caregiver. An essential caregiver can be somebody who previously came and provided services on a regular basis to their loved one, friend, whoever it might be. And we are honoring those that want to be essential caregivers in each level of care. There's also a compassionate caregiver. And initially, when all of this started, that was only defined as end-of-life visits. But since the governor's new order, it goes past the end-of-life aspect and includes even emotional support. But the compassionate caregivers are really more specific for a point in time. It's not an ongoing need that is needed for that person. So you have to differentiate between the point in time or the ongoing assistance that a caregiver might be providing. And then in addition to that, we've also got the general visitations that are happening in assisted living and independent living. And we have a couple of visitation stations that have still survived all of the rain. The water was pooling on some of the tents, and just the weight of the water just ended up tearing them down, but we do have a few that are still remaining. And I am starting to see more people utilizing those. At first we said that you had to make a reservation to be able to use one of the visitation stations in independent living, only because we weren't sure of what the demand was going to be. But the demand for those visitation stations has not been strong. And I am aware of somebody on Sunday who didn't have a reservation. I think that the family was from out of town, and they were able to visit on Sunday. So we will continue to do whatever we can to accommodate visitations and to assist people in becoming essential caregivers or compassionate caregivers.
Thank you. Other questions for Brian or comments?
I think we need to clarify a little bit more, Brian, the difference between visitations in the skilled areas, whether it's skilled nursing or the residential assisted living facility. Those are the two areas where the essential caregiver and compassionate caregiver regulations come out of the governor's task force, and that's what ACA has sent to us. But there are not the same types of regulations that qualify for independent living residents. So I guess what I'm seeing is the need to make a reservation for an independent living residence. We have lots more areas around our large campus where independent living residents could have an opportunity to be with family members, even if it's just kind of walking around the campus. And I guess the question at this point is something that is permissible by this community at this time, or are those independent living residents to only stay on either their porches or those visitation stations, thus requiring the reservation?
Yes, thank you. And, one other point of clarification. Even though we're not doing general visitations in the health center, compassionate caregivers and essential caregivers are allowed in the health center. To your question, we've designated areas that can be visitation stations for independent living. And then we've also extended the outdoor porches and patios as places that can go as well. At this point, we have tried to keep the visitations to those areas to minimize the potential interaction of those visitors and other residents on the campus. And that's why that they've been strategically positioned where they are. We can look into the opportunity for people to go to other areas, but at this point we haven't endorsed that.
Delivery services are allowed on campus? UPS, Amazon?
Yes. So a few weeks ago, or a couple weeks ago, we started having the mail delivered on campus. So the mail carrier agreed to wear a mask when on campus, which we were very grateful for. They still don't their union still doesn't condone being screened. So with him being in his truck and primarily on his own outside, we're pretty comfortable with him being on campus with a mask on so that he can resume his services. We've also allowed parcel deliveries to come onto the campus. And we've referenced some of the other times, shutting a service down is a lot easier than resuming that service. So some of the carriers, and it's hard to get in touch with Amazon Prime and make sure that every Amazon Prime driver knows that they can go on campus. But I have seen, where there's been some packages dropped off, and but we are trying to encourage them to go ahead and go on campus, wear your mask, and they don't have a problem wearing their mask coming on campus, and I think that they're okay with being screened as well. Yes.
Thank you. At one point, we were given instructions to change our delivery address to the maintenance shed. I have not seen anything put out that says specifically, go ahead and change it back to your home address. So that may be why you're still getting packages over there. So you might want to get something out.
That's a good clarification. Thank you for that.
You pointed out that visitors can come, and you mentioned the word patio. Does that include garden apartment patios, or are they still null and void?
The question that was asked is the garden apartment patios a potential for visitation? And I guess my biggest concern with that is that residents in B and C, can't be able to get there, from the outside without walking across other people's patios. And so that's why we established the tents out front of the garden apartments to be able to use. Like I've said, we're giving you all the guidelines. The guideline is to be outside. The guideline is to not come in through a corridor or things to that effect. And, we just look forward to partnering with you on allowing people to come back onto our campus and do so in a safe manner.
You were talking about caregivers and a point in time or ongoing. Who actually is going to make the decision if it's point in time or ongoing?
That decision is usually being made by me.
By you?
Yeah, because for any of the caregivers to be granted onto the campus, they have to give a request to do so. And if it's an ongoing thing, then we ask them to become an essential caregiver. And if they want to come in just for a point in time type of thing, then sure, come on as a compassionate caregiver.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yep, Susan's been trying to get permission to speak for a while.
I was so afraid I'd forget what it was. My question was back when you were talking about the changes in reporting of, and you used the word report and not minutes. So the people in the request, the minutes already go to Laura Staten and I think Gretchen, but the minutes of all the standing committees, no? When did that change?
Yeah, it's on. Okay. To clarify that situation, one of the reasons we tried to establish a standard protocol for what we do with reports, i.e. minutes, they're really basically the same thing as far as we're concerned, is that the reports were going to a variety of people, including Laura. But several of us independently were getting them, sometimes because we were on a committee, other times because somebody thought they ought to send them to us. what I'm hoping to see and be able to talk to the various chairmen of these 5 standing committees is to get them to routinely set up, as far as their minutes of report at the end, with a signatory of copy 2, and list the 2 people that I've listed in this motion. And consequently, that's going to standardize the way that we collect them and also store them, maintain them. Did that answer your question? Good, thank you.
I have a question over here first. Go ahead. Yes, it's on.
I have a question that's been on the minds of many of the residents. Earlier in the year, transportation and housekeeping services were suspended, but we continued to pay for those services. We are wondering what kind of restitution is going to be made for those services that we did not receive.
That topic has come up on the resident council president calls, and the adjustments that we've had to make were adjustments for the safety and security of residents, and we also did not lay off any employees, so we repurposed employees in other capacities, so we did not see the a reduction in expense as a result of providing less services. So there is no plan to be making adjustments for those services or the expense that was paid for those services.
But still, we did not get those services. The residents did not get those services.
Wasn't this addressed in one of Gary's letters that went to all the residents?
I think reality happens. There were some services that we did not get that we were accustomed. There are some additional services like the extra cleaning and stuff, or even meal deliveries and stuff that were added. So as Brian said, Westminster's cost has not declined because certain services were discontinued because other ones basically came in their place. For example, there used to be a fee if you had meal delivery, and now it's complimentary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I rise before you as Chair of the Health Services Committee, and I wish to speak to the resolution number 1, which was passed by the Council earlier today. And I presume that in line 3 of resolution number 1, it says that a staff member respond to the call. But this is not in accord with what Mr. Tenney just outlined to us, that it will be a contract security person who is responding, who is not a staff member. So I think that we should strike from that resolution the words "a staff" and substitute "an appropriate." And I think that would make it compatible with what Mr. Tenney said earlier. In addition, in the same line, it says that a registered nurse might be responding. And I'm sorry, I should know this as Chair of the Health Services Committee, but I am not sure that we have registered nurses on campus 24 hours, 7 days a week. So I think the word registered needs to be struck, because it might not be a registered nurse who responds to that particular situation. Thank you.
Let me point out that after the registered nurse word, there's a very critical "or." And that's deliberate.
The purpose of indicating that it would be a staff responder is including that contractors would then be included as part of staff, which is requiring them to have the same type of background checks and everything else. So basically, it is a paid person that is on our campus. So whether it's a Westminster staff member or whether it's a contractor, they are functioning as a staff member. Correct me with this. The second part about whether it was a registered nurse, the nurses in the assisted living are licensed practical nurses. The registered nurses stay in the health center. So, you know, I think a nurse of some variety, but the or after it is the key factor. I think that in reviewing this particular problem, we recognize that it is not possible to have a nursing staff at the ready 24 hours a day with no other job to be on. If that person was able to be either in the skilled nursing center or in the assisted living center, they would basically be a dual purpose employee. But with the restrictions that are imposed at this point by the government regulations, we cannot extract nurses from either one of those skilled areas. So that's why we go to what would be then a backup contractor who is security or a person skilled with CPR and the training. When the council reviewed this issue, we looked at where we were, what was happening now, and how we could move forward within the confines of the ACA and CMS regulations that are imposed on this community, but at the same time provide that security. And I think that's what Brian was alluding to.
If we continue to leave the word staff in there, are we prepared to pay to do their workman's compensation insurance and do their withholding for taxes as we would have to if they are a staff member? I think inappropriate is a much better term there than a staff member. I'm sorry.
I think that there's a lot of consideration that's been given to this by both the Health Services Committee and the Resident Council. And Wayne, I think your points are valid, but I also understand where the council's coming from. But to your point, the word staff could just be removed, and it could just say, means that a responder to an emergency call, either a nurse, remove registered, or a certified CPR first aid person.
In order to remove that, you can't just simply remove it. You're going to have to kill a resolution and redo a resolution. That's already been put on the floor and voted on and passed. So if you change anything in this resolution, you're going to have to kill it, rewrite it, and get it approved. Also, which provides another question for me, is if we have an outside indemnity taking care of security and med services during the 24/7, which is not employed, are employees of WW, who is really responsible? Is it going to be that outside identity or WW?
Responsible for what?
Anything that happens that shouldn't.
Well, we have our...
I'll clarify it in case somebody says, okay, I'm gonna sue you. Is he gonna sue both? One or the other?
The organization is always responsible, and the agreement that we have with anybody that we contract usually addresses these issues. But from the resolution standpoint, if we were to look forward and we were to see the word staff and registered in there, it could be problematic for future interpretation.
I'd also like to interject from a business standpoint. When an organization incorporates an outside agency to provide services, they have a contract. That contract dictates what their responsibilities are. That contractor is still responsible for their own workers' compensation, their own compensation to their employees, and their own procedures. However, they follow the terms of the contract which was written, and I'm quite sure that Westminster has a contract that has been very carefully reviewed to ensure that we are protected in those cases.
Yes, we do.
So, we've already contracted a company to do this?
Yes, we're going to be contracting with Secure America.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's something I would like to discuss. One is for the safety of the residents here. We have many people who have bikes. We have not had a bike service, to my knowledge, and I can't find out who's in charge of that. I've called residents. They don't know anything about it. Call maintenance. They don't know anything about it. They don't know when it is, where it is, if it exists. Well, in my opinion, someone needs to find this answer out for our benefit. We're riding bikes that have no brakes. And they've been that way for a couple of months. We have no way of getting repair for this situation. And there's going to be a bad accident at some point in time. Many of us depend on the bikes for transportation. I think another problem is there is no communication here. We don't know who to get in touch with. You think you do because that person's in charge, but they don't know anything. And so what happens is you're responsible for taking care of calling the bike shop, let's say, and saying, when do you think you would begin service here? That's not my job. And it's that way with so many issues. I'm sure new residents don't have any idea who to get in contact with for anything. And neither do we.
I think at one time we did have a bicycle repair service that came on campus, and I suspect, like many other services, it was discontinued with the virus pandemic. And I don't think it has resumed. I don't know.
Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Tibbles, just a second. There has been requests for a bike service, and I believe that it was probably in May or June that the bike company, bike shop came out on campus and they provided services out by the maintenance shop. That service has resumed, and I thought that it was just occurring as it regularly would before. I didn't know if it would be quarterly or what, but I can follow up and see when we can get them back out again.
Well, you see on 266, we see that the cart service is up, the walker service, all services. The bike is not mentioned. So we have no idea who to see, what to see.
I authorized them to be on campus or back by maintenance since I've been here, and I didn't do it as just a one-time. So I'll follow up to make sure that that service is continuing.
Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments?
I'd like to address what Ms. Hook brought up. I know there's been a pandemic. You didn't cause it. We didn't cause it. It happened, and it happened to all of us. But the contract says these services will be provided. I came here as a resident because I felt like I would be safe and cared for here. Well, when we didn't have a way to get to the doctor or whatever. But many of us have been reimbursed by our insurance companies, the dental insurance people, the automobile people, because they all profited because we couldn't go anywhere during this pandemic. I know that we've got people carrying food, but those are employees. You said we didn't dismiss any employees. Well, that's the service. The delivery service was part of their job because we weren't going to the dining hall anymore. So that took over their service there. So I personally feel that there should be some reimbursement to those of us who didn't get services.
Any other comments or questions? In that case, meeting adjourned. Before I do that, remind you that the next town hall meeting is on October 28th at 1 p.m. And we will do our usual employee awards and so forth. So put that on your calendar. We will still have limited attendance because we can't pack too many people in here. But I think we'll set up Zoom and an overflow audience somewhere so you can participate. So thank you for coming. Meeting adjourned.